Hi, everyone, and welcome once again to a Hobby Memorial Library event. We are very excited today to have the communication department here. Of course, it's the communication department, and they're going to talk about banned books, which is a perfect topic for them. We have with us today Professor Tammy Phillips, Professor Mike Matthews, and Dr. Brent Royster. And they're going to first be talking about their favorite banned books. Oh, yes, they read banned books. And then we'll go ahead and talk about banned books in general. So, welcome everyone. And Ms. Phillips, I'm going to let you take it over.
Okay, hi. Like Cindy said, or Mrs. Oster said, I am Tammy Phillips, and I am the department chair for communications, as well as one of the English instructors. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Brave New World. And while this is not the only banned book that I've ever read, I've read many of them. I find that a lot of the banned books are banned for social reasons, and I find that very interesting because perhaps we can discuss this later. But most of the times that books are banned are because the powers that be in society within a certain time period tend to set what is morally acceptable and unacceptable. And so as the times change, we find that the types of books that are banned also changes. So in any case, today I'm going to talk about Brave New World. Okay, so I hope you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so with Brave New World, now Brave New World was written by Aldous Huxley in 1932. So obviously it was written a long time ago. However, he was writing about a futuristic society, and with all of the changes with the industrial technology, the changes that were happening, he projected out what would happen if we pursued some of these technologies to some of their limits. So, in the general plot, here's the general plot. It's a dystopian society that's been created in London. Science has replaced religion. So, instead of saying going to church and believing in Jesus Christ, now we believe in Henry Ford. In this new society, all aspects of people's lives are controlled: what role they play in society, what they think, how they act, what they wear, how they're entertained. This is contrasted with a very natural society in New Mexico on a Native American reservation, and everyone there lives a very natural life. They have monogamous relationships. They age normally. They can read books if they so desire. Okay, and they're only controlled by their local tribal rules. So we have these two contrasting societies that you take one member out of this native society and place him into this dystopian society in London that is very heavily controlled by science and futuristic morals. Okay, there's lots of classism in this, and I think classism and there's lots of things that are the reasons probably why it was banned. But there's lots of classism that is being presented in this as being normal. So London society is divided into very distinct classes, and it happens from the times that people are created. I said people are created, they're not born, because you no longer have a mother and a father. Oh, that's taboo, that's disgusting. So instead, you're created in a test tube. And so from the time they're created and how much oxygen they are deprived of, or how much oxygen they are permitted in the test tubes, or whether or not a little alcohol was poured into that surrogate test tube, determines what sort of level of society you're going to be in and serve a role in. So you have alphas. Alphas are the males, okay? They're the future leaders, they're the directors, they're the world controllers. They have full capacity of their brain. They can think to the extent of their cognitive ability. Beneath them are the betas. Now, ironically, little sexist here, the betas are all female. They are the office assistants or secretaries, as we used to call them, and they're also the sexual partners for the alphas. They don't have quite the capability of the alphas, but they are right beneath them and in the class chain. Then we have the deltas. The deltas are all twins. They have very minimal intelligence, so they're fairly controlled, but they're also very trained to be accepting of their role in this particular society or paradigm. Then we have epsilons and gammas. And the further down you go, you basically get it. The little more oxygen you're deprived of in the test tube and the lower cognitive ability that you have. So epsilons have no need for intelligence, it says in the book, and the gammas are even below that. So lots of social classes, and it's very distinct. Okay, so chemistry. I've already talked a little bit about the chemistry of this. The chemistry creates all of these social classes, but there's also behavioral training. They have hypnopedia, where when people are asleep, they have all of this psychological training of you will like this and you will believe that. And so they have these verses that they're trained to believe, and that's all that they can think. So this conditioning aims at making people accept their unescapable social destiny. They're happy with their life because they don't know any better. They've been trained from the time that they could first understand words. And they've also have electric shock. They set books up on one side of a room and flowers. And if you're a Delta and you're not supposed to be drawn towards books and reading and flowers, you're only supposed to be drawn towards your work, then you get electric shock anytime you go towards those objects. So you learn that, oh, that's bad. I don't want to have any part of that. And they basically tell us in the novel that what man has joined, nature is powerless to put asunder. You can't beat all of this hypnopaedic training that these people have been psychologically exposed to, as well as genetically altered. Okay. And it's really kind of funny because you see more classism in the end when, a beta is talking. She says, it's really queer looking down there. Alphas and betas, when they die, their bodies basically get used as fertilizer. And he says, alphas and betas were superior, but they don't make any more plants grow than those nasty little gammas, deltas, and epsilons down there. So there's lots of classist ideologies that are being expressed in the novel. Now, that's in London. Now, when we go to New Mexico, there's also classism there. And you think, well, this is a natural society. Why would they have classism there? But still, there is a person there who was born from a mother who was left behind from this London society. And they don't accept him because he looks different. So there's a little bit of racism in addition to the classism that's going on here. Not for you, white hair, not for the son of the she dog. Go, get out of here. We don't accept you with the rest of us dark haired guys. Okay. So there is racism as well as classism evident in this novel. And he tries to participate in the rituals. The bruises hurt him, the cuts were bleeding, but it was not for the pain that he sobbed. It was because he was all alone. He's an outcast. He's not accepted because he's different. And he even says that if one's different, one's bound to be lonely. Okay, now there's also some things that are morally different between what most conservative societies will accept. In the Lund society, people belong to each other. Everyone belongs to everyone else. No one belongs to themselves. So what does that mean? Your body belongs to anybody who wants to take it, and that's fine. Sexual encounters are expected with multiple partners. You're not supposed to have a monogamous relationship. What's that? Belong to one person? That's sacrilege. And children are trained at a very early age to engage in all kinds of sensual and erotic play. And there's even a quote. They're training these boys, and a little girl saying, "This little boy, I didn't hurt him. He just won't play with me. I want to play sexually and erotically." And the nurse who was watching over them says, "This little boy seems rather reluctant to play in this erotic play." So they're encouraged to go in the bushes and explore all sorts of sensual and sexual attitudes and behaviors from a very early age. They have little expressions in the novel. Orgy, porgy, Ford and fun. Everything's good. So we're going to have lots of sexual orgies and we're going to have lots of fun. So they have movies that are basically pornographic movies and they're called the feelies. And they go and they watch all of these pornographic stuff and they have scent organs that sprays them with all of this sensual spray to make them enjoy it a little bit more. So they get a little drugged while they're watching some sex on stage. And that's what they're trained to do. They're sort of desensitized to it. Now, there's one point in time when one of the main characters, Lenina, she's saying, "Oh, I've been dating this guy for 4 months." And her friend says, "What? It's horribly bad form. What on earth? You've been dating the same guy for 4 months? At your age, you're not old, like 40 or 50. At your age, you need to be, out there expanding around and seeing lots of guys. You're not supposed to be with one guy." So having monogamous relationships is taboo. You're supposed to be free to everyone and whomever requests it. Now, there's also lots of drugs. Okay. Soma is their drug of preference in this particular novel. And they're conditioned from the time they're young to believe that a gram is better than a dam. So don't get mad, don't get emotional, drug yourself. Drugging is good. And then they admit in the final chapters that Christianity without tears, that's what Soma is. We drug everybody to be happy, to can be content with their place in life. And there's one moment in time when everyone's going hysterical because the guy from the New Mexico reservation has thrown away all of their drugs. Oh no, what's going to happen? And they have to come in and they have to spray them down with this drug. So the soma vapor had produced its effect. In tears, the deltas were kissing and hugging one another, and all was good again once they were drugged and happy with their place in life again. So the soma is used to make people happy. When they're unhappy, well, let's drug them. Okay, they've been conditioned, but sometimes that doesn't stick, so we got to go with the drugs. Right. Okay, science and balance. Everything has to be balanced and perfectly controlled. Change is a menace. So any kind of activity or aspect of society that endorses change has to be strictly controlled. And the world controller basically said it isn't only art that's incompatible with happiness, because art, you think art makes people happy, but it also encourages them to have different emotions or experience different aspects of life. He says, so it's not only art that's incompatible, it's also science. Science is dangerous. We have to keep it carefully chained and muzzled. So they can't just let science run rampant, because science leads to new discoveries, new technologies, new ideas. You can't have new ideas. So God is in the safe. We put the Bible in the safe. Ford is on the shelves, but Ford is closely controlled. And of course, there's also suicide. In the final scene, we see one of the main characters, John the Savage. His feet are dangling from an arch, and they're spinning like a compass needle, desperate to find the place where he belongs, his location. And he's unable. So ultimately, the only answer is to end his life. Right. So if that's not enough, sex, drugs, suicide, moral values, very different from traditional conservative societies. I believe that's why this particular book was banned. And this book, I believe Dr. Royster is going to talk about a little bit later, has been something that has enticed other authors to address some of these dystopian ideals. Okay. All right. So that's Brave New World.
Well, thank you. And you pushed through with coughing and all.
I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Well, that was awesome. Thank you for the book talk. It was very interesting to hear that. All right, Professor Matthews, go ahead and take it up.
Hi, thanks, Tammy. That was one of my favorite books when I was reading voraciously in my 20s and undergrad, and you just reminded me of some of the awesome scenes in that book. One of the books that I read several times that basically I blame for some of the perspectives that I have on the world now is Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. I don't have a slideshow, but I do have some things on my pad here. Here's some of the covers. Catch 22. I don't know. It looks backwards on my screen. Can y'all see it forwards there? Okay, great. Joseph Heller was a bombardier in World War II, and he based a character in Catch 22 on that experience. The main character in Catch 22 is Yossarian, and he's a bombardier in World War II. The book was written in the early 60s, 1961, when the Vietnam War was coming up. And the book is basically, on the surface, pretty much anti-war during a time when there was a lot of protests going on, a draft into the Vietnam War. And it's a satire on the total, irrationality of the whole system that creates this conflict. And Yossarian starts to become aware of this ironic situation that he's in, where the, you fly a number of missions, and then you can get out of the service and go home. But every time he lands, they raise the number of missions that he has to fly, and they just keep him there. And he starts talking to the officers about how every time he goes up, they just want to kill him. It's just, I've read about how he came up with the Catch 22 idea too, and it wasn't specifically planned. He just worked around with different titles, different numbers, and just came up with the name Catch 22. And there's a quote in here on this page that I found that seems to be at the center of at least the exploration and the satire against this sort of mechanism that puts everybody in this system, even though they don't want to be there. It's totally irrational. It's life-threatening. It doesn't make any sense. And it's this passage here. There was only one catch, and that was catch 22, which specified that a concern for one's safety in the face of dangers that were real and immediate was the process of a rational mind. So it's ironic to think rationally in a situation where you just have to behave by instinct and survival and all of these kinds of things. In the book, the bomber squadron is led by these officers who become invested in commodities, and they turn the bomber squadron into their own company. They repaint the bombers with the big M for their company, and they trade cotton. And at one point, they can't get the cotton, the commodities, to sell, so they put it in a bunch of chocolate and see if the Air Force soldiers will eat it, and they try to move it, and then they make a deal with the Germans. They're in Italy, and a bomber squadron in Italy in World War II, and they're flying over, missions over Germany. They make a deal with the German military that if they take all the cotton and the chocolate cotton and so on, that they've confiscated the bombers and made them their business planes. They'll bomb their own airfield, and they do that, and they kill one of Yossarian's friends, and he goes and confronts the officers about it, and they say, well, we'll let you out and we'll let you off and everything under one condition. And he says, what is that? And they say, well, you have to like us. You have to go back to the United States. We'll let you go home, and you have to say good things about us. And he really struggles with that. And there's another character. His name is Orr, which is very satirical choice of names. In a satire, the names represent the the ideas almost allegorically. Orr, ORR. The whole book, Orr, he's a pilot, crashes his planes into the large lake near the airfield, and he gets a reputation for just being a bad pilot. He's crashed every plane on the way back, and in the end, he is the actual choice of the way out of this prison-like situation where even the rational mind is not able to be applied. And I'm not sure if I should give away what he does, but he's actually the whole time training himself and planning for this way out. The book was banned soon in the early 70s for curse words, bad language, stuff like this. But the people, the students and young people loved this book. It was a time when there was a lot of civil unrest and protests against the Vietnam conflict, right? And there was the civil rights movement and a lot of youth movements and so on. And they somehow succeeded in getting the book back into some of the libraries, right? Now, for me, the book, taught me to question with a rational mind some of the things that should be efficient, should be compassionate, should make some sense. really shaped a lot of how I view things, how I approach art, how I approach writing. Um, Basically, what I tell students is when I read a novel, when I read a poem, when I read something, when I study some art, I get the same message in general. Pay attention. Closely pay attention. And this book really taught me early on, one of many books that did pay attention. Otherwise, you're going to be washed over with ideas that don't make any sense.
Thank you,
Mike.
Professor Matthews. And now we have Dr. Royster. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brent Royster, Dr. Brent Royster. I teach composition here as well as some other classes. And thank you very much for having me here to speak about banned books. I'm going to be speaking briefly about the book 1984 by George Orwell. And I think it's nice, having listened to both Tammy and Mike, Dr. or Professor Phillips and Mike, Professor Matthews, that the three books that we're discussing all have sort of not only a lineage, but a common thread. Because all of these books are the balance, or rather the imbalance, between freedom and control. And so 1984 is a book written in 1949, and it takes place also in London, much as Brave New World had. But the system of control is the exact opposite. So in Brave New World, everyone is given everything that they could possibly ever want. So there's no desire for revolt. And as Tammy had said, that's still a system of control. And in 1984, on the other hand, it's sort of a warning against a totalitarian state. So in 1984, you have the controlling party, capital P party, led by Big Brother. And Big Brother is essentially the system of control, what would be thought of as the panopticon. You know, Big Brother sees everything, and by seeing everything, controls everything. Everyone feels as if by at any moment in their lives they can be viewed, and so their behavior is thereby constricted, as in not free. And so our title character, our main character, is a man named Winston. And he is essentially, I'm going to put it in contemporary terms, he's kind of like an editor. His job is to create the historical language, recreating it into newspeak, or updating our understandings of the world to align with the party. And if this sounds familiar, it should. But the idea is Winston is also innately good and decent and has a desire for truth. And so in as much as his job is to revise and re-see the language to fit more closely with the party, he also sees that something doesn't sit right with him. And so he, being, and I'm going to use this word, an individual, wants to escape. If anyone is reading these three books as a tercet, by the way, I would also suggest beginning with Jean-Jacques Rousseau, because he was the person who wanted to figure the idea of the romantic individual escaping the bonds of the world. And that theme runs through all three of these books. But Winston has a desire then to escape, and does so by going essentially trying to seek places where Big Brother cannot see. And one of these places, of course, is a romantic adventure. Is adventure the right word? With Julia. And they are like-minded in that they, they have a desire to escape. Not to give too much of the novel away, but what happens in the end is sort of a tragic inversion. Rather than escaping, Winston is sort of brought back. So by voicing the desire for freedom and individuality, and thought, again, that's the big one, thought. So his freedom can take place within the mind, whereas so many of our physical, or not his physical constraints are not free because they are at all times and at any time viewed. And free thought then can be punished by torture. And this torture is meant to bring a person back to within the fold, as it were, or entirely remove them from the equation. And in the end, again, I don't want to give, but Winston is being tortured for his behaviors and activities, and these tortures are usually the thing that you fear most. And so his fear of rats is brought into this, where his face is encaged, face or hand encaged with rats. And in a moment of panic, he essentially rats out Julia. And so our character that we want so much to be free and to be to escape becomes a lever of the system. And so something to remember in this is that our newspeak that Winston is the editor of is he's in charge of creating these phrases like doublespeak. And one of the phrases is freedom is slavery. And to be free means to be enslaved. We become enslaved by ideas that we might escape. And so that keeps us in line. And in fact, that is an ironic way of seeing it, that we want so much to be free that we become enslaved by that idea. But the exact opposite is true as well, is that for him to, or for the society, the power is to be enslaved is to be free. You can work within this, but then your desire for escape will eventually bring you to pretty coarse ends. I wanted to also bring up how nicely this book dovetails with Professor Phillips' Brave New World, because as these two books work, everyone is controlled by this totalitarian state. And in Brave New World, they're controlled by all of the things provided for them so that they desire no escape. There's another book. So you're going to read Rousseau, and then you're going to read these three books, and then you're going to read a book by a man named Neil Postman. And he talks about how in our current state, we have amused ourselves to death. And this book was written in the late 80s, early 90s, but he talks about how Brave New World and 1984 are both emblematic of our contemporary culture, and that we We've given away our freedoms, and in fact, we crave the slavery, the enslavement that takes place in culture, to the point where even our wars and even our entertainments shackle us. And one brief note to bookend that is, if you don't believe that to be true, leave your phone at home. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. These are great book talks on these great novels. Now, my question is why my light keeps going off. No, my question is, I understand that, when these books were written, society is like, oh, no, 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 this is out of the norm, that is out of the norm. With in regards to the three books that you guys read, why do you think people want to ban the books? I mean, because they could basically just say, I'm not reading this and walk away, or my children are not reading this and walk away. Why do you think they want to ban it all?
I'll start only by reiterating something that Professor Phillips had said at the beginning, that many of the books don't keep in line with current mores. And so, like, if they, I know, and this is out of keeping with what we're currently talking about. Well, it's not, but like contemporary conversations are about the LGBTQ community and race, and how race is talked about in the classroom, race and gender and so forth. And there obviously there are differing opinions about this, and rather than teaching how to bridge differences, it seems to some to be easier to shut down conversation, to eliminate the conversation as if the conversation should not exist. And again, the idea of freedom in this country, it seems to me that should be ironic to everyone who reads, because bridging differences is important for everyone to be able to express or explore. And two, if we didn't, we want to create a mono community of some sort. And I don't believe that could exist either, because eventually the mono community would have to eat itself as well. If all your raison d'etre is to find an enemy, you're going to find an enemy within your best friends if you don't have enemies outside of yourself.
I'd like to add a little bit too that a lot of this is completely ironic too. Books are banned because, oh, it has such scandalous or outrageous values that it's presenting, but oftentimes it is condemning those. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, just like Brave New World, is presenting some ideas, but it's really social commentary against some of those ideas. So the irony is really, an interesting twist, and that people ban it for the socially immoral behaviors, but yet it's also condemning them at the same time. So, it's interesting how people are perceiving things and how the author is intending to make certain social commentary as well.
Interesting. Great ideas. Professor Matthews, do you want to add anything?
I'm not sure I can add anything beyond what Professor Phillips and Professor Royster said. I think that from what I've seen recently and what I've read here about this book being banned, people who are working to get these books out of the libraries and out of the school curriculums, they claim that they're worried about what their kids will be exposed to and so on. And what I've noticed is that they're not seeing the bigger picture of what's in these books, and that takes some time to be able to see the implications, and that, like what Professor Phillips says, I think they are bringing up these issues so that we can all have reasonable conversations about things that really cause serious suffering. And most of the articles that I've read and the videos I've seen of people who are attempting to get these books banned, they cherry pick certain words, certain things like this, lines, and so on. And the very, very literal, linear uh, readings of these books. And it's being an English professor and having read all of these kinds of things, it's in a country where we can actually access all of this and not, be in danger from our, um, you know, elected officials or whatever for whatever we read. I mean, we have a Professor Schweitzer, who was in Argentina in the 80s and said that they would come in the house and look for the novels on your shelf. And if you had a certain novel on your shelf, you were taken. And we don't have to have it. We have access to all of this, yet that means that there's groups of people who don't want that access, and then they choose not to read into it and have a reasonable conversation and figure out that two truths can be true even if opposite. And it's just it's how we work in this country. It's good that we can discern, but we got to be able to have access to it. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. Thank you. Well, I'm going to kind of combine my next two questions. We we had just allowed all the books, because librarians, we actually have been fighting this banned book idea for a long time, and we always fight to have books on the shelves, and it's just a constant battle in the librarian world. What do you think the world would be like if we just said, okay, take all the books, ban all the books? And so how would it affect the people of today? And if we just gave up our fight and said, okay, take off all the books you want to take off, how would that affect people in the future? Professor Phillips, you want to start first? Because she's got somewhere to go after this.
Yeah. So wow. I mean, if we can't have open conversations about things that we disagree with, what's the point of having the ability to cognitively analyze for yourself? I think anytime that ideas are controlled and minimized, and not conversations not happening, I think that's when we don't grow. And I think it's necessary in any society to have these ideas and to think and to ponder and to wonder. Otherwise we'd be kind of like the deltas and the epsilons in the Brave New World. We'd just be drugged and we wouldn't be able to do any of that. So I mean, I think it's necessary for conversation, and you don't have to agree with everything. Okay, but if it sparks conversation, it's okay to disagree and argue against something without being emotionally displaced. Okay, but I think the conversations are necessary in any society.
Great answer. Either one of you?
I can give this a try. I think that happens in other countries where there's a lot more control over what people can read and talk about and converse over. And I've been to one of those places 6 times, and basically, deep down inside this crazy thing that I do, artist, I am an optimist, and I think that if you had to ban everything, and just have little cute things that everybody agrees on the shelves, people are going to seek those out anyway. And there'll be, you know, a underground kind of self-education, sort of a quiet, quiet, hopefully, sort of rebellion. And people will find them, copy them, trade them around. The unfortunate thing is that they won't be available to everyone if that ever occurred, and there will be people who lose out. But hopefully, they will find this secret underground libraries. There's one, for instance, when there was a lot of issues about going into the Middle East, to in the early 2000s. A neighbor of mine, when I lived in Austin, bought and ran what's called underground books. It was literally down the stairs underground on Guadalupe, and he had a lot of those books that were controversial for the time on purpose in the bookstore. So it wasn't public availability, but they had a lot of lecturers and so on. So, I mean, it would hopefully rise up. Hopefully, we don't have to get to that point. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Great, great. You're right. People will be still getting it. So, Dr. Royster, any thoughts?
I want to concur with Mike to some degree. I think it's kind of like, I don't know, we have it both happening already. Already we are limited to our information, and the information that we get is sometimes mediated by bad actors to the point where now we have to be susceptible or suspect of the information that we get, which is again one of the reasons why we have librarians, is because if we didn't have folks to help us mediate this, then we believe everything we could ever be given. But I also believe what Mike has said is that I believe in the romantic imagination. I believe in the power of the individual. And so if we don't have it, we'll create it. Now, what that would look like, I don't know. We read a lot of dystopian literature, and I feel as if the world is going in that direction to the point where dystopia is just perhaps what we're gonna get. I don't want to be pessimistic about it because you know what, Brazil. But I think it's we do create the dream when we don't have it there to sort of manufacture. How does that work? No. Anyway, that's a tautology that I don't know if I can impact. So, all right, I'll stop there.
Well, thank you both, and yeah, it brings up a lot of conversation. You know, this is why librarians will stand there between the library and the public and go, no, we need these books. Is because who are we to judge what people need and don't need? And so, you know, it is a constant battle with us, and one that we will continue to fight. We love the fact that we have professors here at CTC in the communications department that are reading banned books. And that just shows you that they totally understand what it is that needs to be talked about. And so we truly appreciate that. We just want to remind everyone, this entire week, we have been doing Banned Book Week. And we have been talking about books and graphic novels and many today's books that have been banned. And I know it's unheard of, but we have all of our library banned books on tables in our library this week. So just walk on over to the library, see what is actually on a banned book or a challenge list, and you will be surprised and you will find that you're asking yourself, why is this banned? And that starts that conversation in your brain. And you can talk to other people about it. So we hope you guys have gotten a lot of food for thought this week. And, if you're looking for a book, just talk to us and we will figure out a way to get that book to you, or, we will talk about what's going on with the book. But we always say that librarians are jack of all trades, masters of none. That is true about a lot of subjects, but book protection, don't mess with the librarians. So we are masters in that. So anyway, thank you so much for visiting with us today. We truly, truly appreciate it. And everybody take their classes. They have such broad ideas. and learn from them.
Thank you,
So
Cindy.
you're welcome.
Thank
Well,
you.
you guys have an awesome week, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody. Don't hang up yet.